Emperor Commodus has a surprise. He's the headline bout, fighting as a gladiator.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're discussing the most despicable male monarchs from the entirety of human history. Not all will be kings in name, but they all serve the same role.
He was tried for treason, murder, and embezzlement. Charges of cannibalism were, though, dropped.
William the Conqueror, King of England. England's first Norman king was given a much less flattering title by his contemporaries, particularly the Anglo-Saxons whom he conquered.
William's mind is made up. He will cross the Channel and take the English crown by force.
When he conquered England in 1066, he made himself busy replacing Anglo-Saxon and Viking cultures with Norman culture.
William, known now as William the Conqueror, is the new master of the kingdom.
This involved him replacing the noble class and heading north and crushing a rebellion by decimating the countryside.
He has Europe's most centralized kingdom, England, under his control, but he also is, simply by virtue of being Duke of Normandy, a leading power in northern France.
There's no consensus on how severe the damage was, but contemporary sources make it appear genocidal. The effects of his conquest can still be seen today, such as the three lions of England, which descend from a Norman crest. If William failed, England might still have a dragon for a flag, much like Wales today. Emperor Rudolph II, Holy Roman Emperor. The 30 Years' War was one of the most destructive wars in European history. It was fought in Central Europe, essentially between Protestants and Catholics after decades of rising tensions between the two groups. Between 4.5 and 8 million people died, with areas of Germany losing over 50% of their population. The actions of Rudolph II were one of the main reasons it began. His biggest mistake was the Letter of Majesty, which gave Bohemian Protestants religious freedom, but it wasn't long before he regretted it. After his death, leadership in the empire fragmented. A devout Catholic Ferdinand II took over, and the security Rudolph II had provided for Protestants was proven false. Peter the Cruel, King of Castile and Leon. The name alone lets you know what type of man Peter was. He ruled the Spanish kingdoms of Castile and Leon basically from 1350 to 1369. During that period, he was excommunicated by the Pope for his extreme cruelty. He got his title from the huge number of people he had personally killed, including some of his half-brothers, his father's mistress, and his treasurer. Supposedly, he murdered a deposed Granadan ruler with his bare hands. Some claim he even murdered his first wife, Blanche of Bourbon, but this fact is disputed. On the bright side, he was fairly tolerant toward Jewish people, but this meant that after his death, his Jewish supporters were forced to wear yellow badges to make them stand out. Nicholas I, Emperor of Russia. After Alexander I's rule during the Napoleonic Wars, Nicholas I became Emperor of Russia, holding this title from 1825 to 1855. During his rule, he became known for crushing multiple revolutions.
Under Nicholas, the Tsar's absolute rule became Russia's official creed. He declared democracy or a constitution out of the question.
First was the Decembrist Revolt in 1825, started by a radical liberal movement that wanted to establish a constitutional monarchy and to abolish serfdom, which was almost slavery.
Then Nicholas opened fire. The Decembrist Rebellion and the dream of sweeping political change collapsed in chaos.
Nicholas also crushed Poland's November Uprising, helped crush the Hungarian Revolution, and in 1853 brought Russia into the disastrous Crimean War. It lasted until 1856, resulting in a major defeat for Russia, which Nicholas never lived to see.
Tsar Nicholas reviewed his troops under a cold, driving rain. The next day, he came down with pneumonia. 1 week later, he was dead.
Justinian II, Byzantine Emperor. Also known as the Slit-Nosed, Justinian II wasn't considered an ugly man for having his nose cut off, but mainly for being exceedingly despicable. He ruled the Byzantine Empire from 685 until 695, when he was deposed and had his nose removed to prevent him from reclaiming the throne. This didn't work, and he came back in 705. He spent his second rule obsessed with revenge, hunting down anyone who helped depose him. Justinian had two of his rivals publicly humiliated and then executed. Eventually, the people revolted again in 711. This time, they decided to cut off his whole head rather than just his nose, which was then put on display in Rome and Ravenna. Pope John XII. We don't often think of popes as monarchs, but for hundreds of years, that's pretty much what they were. To many, John XII was the worst in history. He took the title in 955, aged between 17 and 25, then lost it in 964. His contemporaries were far from fond of him, alleging he turned the Lateran Palace into a brothel. One of his biggest blunders was making German King Otto I the Holy Roman Emperor, then later betraying him. Otto responded by deposing John, who fled Rome and died soon afterward. One source claims he died committing adultery, either because of an outraged husband or a ruptured internal organ. Andronikos I Komnenos, Byzantine Emperor. The Komnenos dynasty gained prominence with Alexios I in 1081. He took control of the Roman Empire in 1081, then fought for almost 40 years and restored the empire to glory once again. The dynasty ended with Andronikos I, who took charge in 1183 and lost it 2 years later. He usurped the throne by killing 14-year-old Emperor Alexios II. Andronikos' rule was a constant state of terror, with him killing and blinding tons of opponents. In the end, the people of Constantinople revolted and murdered him themselves. It was a brutal death that lasted days, with his corpse remaining unburied for years after. Jean-Bedel Bokassa, Emperor of Central Africa. Few modern dictators stylize themselves as monarchs, but Bokassa of the Central African Republic loved Napoleon so much he couldn't resist. After being president for 10 years, he decided to name himself the Emperor of Central Africa in 1976. It only lasted 3 years before a coup kicked him out of power. During his rule, he was exceptionally evil. He reportedly loved to dine on human flesh and even allegedly fed it to foreign ambassadors. Eventually, he was tried in 1986 after fleeing to France. They found him guilty of some disgusting things, resulting in a death penalty that was ultimately never carried out.
Sentenced to death, he spent a total of 7 years in prison before being released in 1993 under an amnesty. He died of a heart attack 3 years later.
Hirohito, Emperor of Japan. Under Hirohito's reign, Imperial Japan terrorized the Asian continent, all in the emperor's name. Hirohito was aware of the Nanjing Massacre, biological warfare, Japan's treatment of prisoners, and comfort women, alongside many other war crimes. Despite this, he barely intervened. If he had pushed for peace when the war was clearly lost, millions of lives could have been saved. After the war, he never issued a formal apology and framed Japan as a victim.
The war situation has developed not necessarily to Japan's advantage, while the general trends of the world have all turned against her interest.
General MacArthur protected him from the Tokyo War Crimes Tribunal, with others taking the blame. Hirohito then went on to rule until 1989, never once showing genuine remorse for the crimes he was culpable for.
Hirohito was the longest-serving emperor in Japanese history, a period when Japan saw itself rise and fall and rise again.
Attila the Hun, ruler of the Hunnic Empire. Nicknamed the Scourge of God, Attila was the ruler of the Huns from 435 until 453. He preyed on the Western Roman Empire, sacking cities and slaughtering their inhabitants. He forced towns to pay large sums of gold to prevent him from attacking.
You're right. There's a problem.
Attila particularly enjoyed gruesome forms of execution, often impaling his enemies through the rectum and leaving them to die a slow, painful death.
If I see you in my lands ever again, I will kill you.
In fact, it's said that the corpses of one massacred city completely clogged up the Danube River for years. After his death, he committed one more act of cruelty by having the men who buried him murdered to keep the location of his coffin a secret. Commodus, Roman Emperor. During his reign as the Roman Emperor from 177 to 192, he earned himself a reputation as one of the worst emperors ever. The Pax Romana was a golden age for Rome, which ended when Commodus took power.
After inheriting a vast and powerful empire from his father, the great Marcus Aurelius, Commodus is at odds with the ruling class of Rome, the Senate.
He barely cared about doing his job. Instead, he focused more on being a gladiator, allowing his corrupt officials to do as they pleased. Allegedly, he killed hundreds of people and exotic animals simply for fun. He had a huge god complex and even renamed the city of Rome to Colonia Lucia Annia Commodiana.
And we wouldn't believe that this was true if it were not for the fact the coins of Commodus's era show that this was the case. He really did name it after himself.
After dying, the Senate named him a public enemy, destroyed his statues, and renamed Rome. Timur, the first ruler of the Timurid Empire. The Timurid Empire was one of the largest empires in southwestern Asia. Like most empires, it wasn't formed peacefully. Timur created it in the 14th century, and according to most accounts, he was a very naughty man. Many of his campaigns involved massacres against civilians in cities such as Delhi, Baghdad, Damascus, and Aleppo alongside others. Timur claimed he was the sword of Islam, but contradicted this by killing many Muslims. Historians estimate between 5 and 17 million people died because of his conquests. This allowed him to control an exceptionally large empire, mainly because all the people who would oppose him were dead. John, King of England. Reigning from 1199 to 1216, King John is thought by many historians to be the worst monarch in Britain's history. And considering how long their history is, that is saying something. For starters, he betrayed his own brother, who was off fighting in the Crusades at the time, by attempting to seize power while he was gone. Eventually, he did become king, and to prevent any potential uprising, it's believed he had his own nephew Arthur murdered. John further alienated the English nobles by losing all of Normandy to France, and exiled those he felt suspicious of.
Your father, Sir Walter, owes tax to the crown. My crown.
To top it off, he frequently forced himself on their wives and immediately broke the agreement of the Magna Carta, beginning the First Barons' War.
I think you'll find our grievances more serious.
I think you find mine now.
I don't think you will, actually.
Zhengde Emperor of China. While his era name may have meant right virtue, the Zhengde Emperor was neither right nor virtuous. He became emperor at age 14, but had little interest in ruling China. Instead, he invested his time in brothels or his harem, which held so many women that many starved to death due to lack of food. He once ordered his ministers and soldiers to dress up as street vendors so that he could walk through his palace and play act being a commoner in the marketplace. Those who refused were punished severely. He reportedly died at the age of 29 after he drunkenly fell into the foul waters of the Grand Canal and came down with a fatal illness. Vlad the Impaler, Voivode of Wallachia. You have to figure the person who inspired Bram Stoker's Dracula wouldn't be the nicest of guys. Vlad reigned as Prince of Wallachia on 3 separate occasions during the 15th century and demonstrated a marked tendency toward bloodthirstiness. Purging those who plotted against him was only the start. Vlad enjoyed torturing his prisoners, including roasting them alive, skinning them, and removing several body parts before finally killing them. Of course, his favorite method of execution was impalement, with some sources claiming he once had 20,000 corpses impaled outside the capital city. Vlad sought to earn such a reputation for savagery and brutality that enemies would be reluctant to attack him. Yeah, he achieved that goal. Leopold II, King of the Belgians. The second King of the Belgians, Leopold II earns a spot on this list for his atrocious behavior in the Congo. Although the Congo was not a colony of Belgium, Leopold secured it on the grounds that he would improve the lives of the native inhabitants. To put it simply, he did not. He forced the natives to harvest rubber, earning him a fortune, but leading to the deaths of around 10 million Congo natives. The men were forced to work, and if they refused, their wives and children were mutilated.
What Leopold did was to establish government as a system of organized plunder.
Reports of extreme human rights abuses eventually led to a huge international scandal, and ultimately, Leopold was forced to surrender the colony. Herod the Great, King of Judea. The ancient world had its fair share of terrible rulers, and Herod ranks right near the top of the list. The King of Judea from 37 BCE to 4 BCE, he is perhaps best remembered for the Bible's account of his attempted murder of Jesus Christ as an infant.
What is unwise, Tero, is to take such a prophecy too lightly.
The Bible states that Herod tried to achieve this goal by ordering the murder of every boy under 2 years old in Bethlehem, although some sources claim this may never have actually happened. He had several of his family members murdered, including his wife and sons, and his enormous spending was largely responsible for the debilitating poverty among his people. No wonder he needed some 2,000 soldiers as bodyguards.
Make my enemies your enemies, and I offer you a substantial gift.
Genghis Khan, Great Khan of the Mongol Empire. The founder of what would become the largest contiguous empire the world has ever seen. Genghis Khan was certainly an effective leader, but he was also extremely ruthless. His army didn't only crush other armies, it destroyed civilians and children along with the armed soldiers. In fact, some sources claim that over 700,000 people were murdered in one massacre alone. He allowed his soldiers to assault women in front of their families and enslaved hundreds of thousands of people. Considered by many to be a genocidal ruler, it's estimated that his armies killed somewhere between 20 and 60 million people during his 21-year reign. Caligula, Emperor of the Roman Empire.
If only all Rome had just one neck.
Believing he was a god, Caligula quickly began murdering people for his own amusement when he became Rome's third emperor in 37 CE. He was rumored to have forced his 3 sisters to have sex with him, and frequently had sex with the wives of his personal bodyguards, whom he made stand outside the room and listen. He made it illegal for people to mention the word goat in his presence, under the punishment of death, and tried to make his horse a Roman consul.
Silence, scum!
As a surprise to no one, his own guards eventually assassinated him. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Ivan the Terrible, Tsar of all the Russias. When terrible becomes your epithet, you know you've done a few bad things during your time. Although considered by many to be an effective ruler, Ivan often fell into fits of uncontrollable rage. One of these fits resulted in the murder of his son, while another resulted in the severe beating of his pregnant daughter-in-law, possibly causing a miscarriage. He also used a mounted police force and gave them absolute power to arrest and execute anyone they desired. Any nobles he disliked, he had crushed, going so far as to have one eaten alive by dogs, and he massacred the people of Novgorod because he distrusted them. Is it any wonder Joseph Stalin considered him to be a great man? Who do you think was the most bloodthirsty monarch in history? Did we include them or not? Let us know in the comments section.
He fills the city with statues of himself, dressed as the god Hercules,